I am calling back to order the regular meeting of the Township Committee of the Township of Morris for Wednesday, December 18, 2019. The time is now 7:15. I'd like to start off by apologizing for the delay. The Township Committee convenes for what we call a closed session to discuss personnel and legal matters before our meeting, so that if we make a decision, we can then come out and inform the public of what we decided before the meeting. So that's why we took a little extra time tonight with other things that we have to do. So we first rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we rise, I want to make a comment about the sobering events of last week. I have, for too many occasions this year, spoken from this dais about gun violence in our country. And last week it came a little bit too close to home, just a few miles away in Jersey City, where 4 victims lost their lives. And as we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, I want to, all of us, think of them as we recite those words. But specifically, there was a police officer, Detective Joseph Seals, who put his life in danger to protect the residents of Jersey City. And we take our police officers for granted way too often, I think. These guys every day show up for work, and they show up for work to protect our community. And, you know, most of the time they're just driving around. But when the time comes where they do have to put their lives on the line, they do. And that happened last week in Jersey City. A man with 5 children, we have a lot of kids in the audience, 5 children, put his life on the line and unfortunately lost it. And we owe a lot of respect to this Detective Joseph Seals. So as we rise, I'd like to, all of us, think about the victims of the gun violence last week, and particularly Detective Joseph Seals' family. Thank you. Let's all rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before you sit, please, can I also ask for a moment of silence for Detective Seals? Very good, thank you. So we have a lot of young people in the audience tonight, and we've had that earlier in the year. I usually like to start off the meeting with a little bit of explanation about who we are up here before we start the meeting. Now, as you know, in our country, we have a president who's in charge of overall country. We have a governor of the state of New Jersey who's presiding over the state. Every county in the state of New Jersey has what's called a board of chosen freeholders, and those freeholders guard our county. There's no one person appointed, but we have a board of freeholders. And in Morris Township, we have a township committee of 5 people. In some towns, you have an elected mayor, like in Morristown. In some towns, like Morris Township, we have an appointed mayor from a council of 5 people. I want to introduce them: Mr. Jorphy, all the way to the right, Mr. Mancuso. All the way to my left is Mr. Arvanites, and Deputy Mayor Kathy Wilson. Also up here we have our municipal council, which is John Mills. So he's the lawyer for the town, and he gives us advice on what we need to do. We have our administrator, Mr. Jim Quinn, who operates the township on a daily basis. And we have our clerk, Mrs. Amelia, to our right, who takes notes and keeps order at the meeting. So we are the deciders of sort of everyday life in Morris Township. I am the mayor, but I am appointed as head of the council. And so the mayor often changes from year to year in Morris Township. So I do have the head of the dais tonight, but if you come back next year, you might see somebody else up here, and that's why. So that gives a little explanation of the township. At the end of the meeting, we usually make some personal remarks, some general commentary, and I know a lot of you are going to be leaving, which is fine. You're here for certain ceremonies and dignity. So I'm going to move one of my remarks forward to this point in the meeting before we actually get started. And the man to my left, Mr. Quinn, I told you he's the township administrator, but he's also part of an organization called the Police Unity Tour. And the Police Unity Tour started in 1997. It was organized by an officer named Patrick Montori of the Florham Park Police Department. with the hope of raising and bringing awareness of police officers who have died in the line of duty to honor their sacrifices. It started with 18 riders on a 4-day fundraising bicycle ride from Florham Park, New Jersey to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., and it has grown to 9 chapters in the country, consisting of nearly 2,500 members nationwide who make the trip annually. Their motto is, "We ride for those who died." And to date, this is according to the website, you've raised how many millions of dollars?
$28 million.
$28 million. And the reason I bring this up now, just after I made those opening remarks, is because the Police Unity Tour, Chapter 1, which is the chapter in this area, there are 9 chapters across the country, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and they also, according to the website, they also have members from other countries that I saw: Australia, Israel, Canada, and India, and Italy, and England. So there are officers in other parts of the country. And the reason I'm saying this now, right after my opening remarks, is that the Police Unity Tour Organization, Chapter 1, which Mr. Quinn is the president, recently made a donation to Officer Shields' family in Jersey City. And if there is anything that anybody wants to do to support what happened in Jersey City last week, support a family of 5 children who lost their father, giving his life for the community, you can go to policeunitytour.org, policeunitytour.org, and make a donation. And that's how you can help make a difference for this family through the good work of the Police Unity Tour. We have officers in the room who are part of the Unity Tour.
Chief's ridden, Captain Cheers ridden.
Very good, guys. And again, thank you to Tim for the good things he does outside of Morris Township for the benefit of people who support us.
Thank you.
Very good. So all year, we've made some changes this year. Sorry I've been talking for so long, but I'm the mayor and I have the mic. But we've implemented something new this year. We've been honoring somebody or an organization at every single meeting. We have a couple of honorees tonight, but we've done this to shine the light on the good people in our community, the good things that people do for others in the community, and just the general good of what happens in Morris Township. Because I say Morris Township is a great place to live. I think we all would agree that it's a wonderful place to live. It is one of the big elements on top of the staff we have here at Town Hall, the quality of our police department, the fire department, et cetera, are the people that live in the community. The people that donate their time for the betterment of everybody else, the volunteers, the coaches who come out and coach our kids. So we want to take the opportunity this year of recognizing those people, and we've been doing that one by one at each of our meetings. We have 2 people to recognize tonight. Mrs. Amelia, who keeps order, wants me to first make sure that we approve the minutes from December 13th. So she's keeping me in line. So
I was giving you a pass.
You're going to give me a pass. So will somebody move the minutes of December 13th, regular and closed, and December 2nd, special meeting, three meetings?
As circulated, sir.
Very good. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good. And now we're going to move to the presentations. We are first going to start with a police department reaccreditation. And are you doing that, Chief? Is Harry Delgado here too?
Yes, Chief Delgado.
Very good. I'll ask you 2 guys to come to the microphone.
Hey, I'm losing my voice. I apologize for that to start.
Brown, so.
I'm Harry Delgado. I am the Accreditation Program Director for the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police. I want to thank you for your kind words towards police and police officers, because certainly it is a time where it makes you think about the value of policing, not only locally but in this country. And so tonight, appropriately, I come to recognize your police department as one of the best police departments in the state of New Jersey, and I actually bring proof. So accreditation is a voluntary process in which a police agency commits to meet a certain number of standards. In the case of New Jersey, 112 standards, voluntarily. And so the process is so rigorous that about 43% to this point, out of 560 law enforcement agencies that would be eligible to apply, only 43% have made it. But what the Morris Township Police Department has done is they've actually achieved reaccreditation. So that number drops to less than 1/3 of the law enforcement agencies in the state of New Jersey that have successfully made it through the reaccreditation process. So if you indulge me for 2 minutes, I'd like to share with you the significance of the achievement. So accreditation is a process. The foundation of accreditation lies in the adoption of standards containing a clear statement of professional objectives. Accreditation is a progressive and time-proven way of helping law enforcement agencies calculate and improve their overall performances. It is a certification by an independent reviewing authority, in this case the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police, that the accredited agency was carefully measured against established set of state and national standards, again in the state of New Jersey, 112 of those, and has met, and in the case of the Morris Township Police Department, exceeded in many instances accepted practices in the field of law enforcement. Now, research shows that accredited agencies have 11% fewer police professional liability claims, 11% fewer worker compensation claims, and 31% fewer auto liability claims. And moreover, as I know you do, municipalities that participate in the male-affiliated joint insurance fund stand to receive substantial insurance premiums discounts when their police department becomes accredited. Now, in addition to these fiscal advantages, there are a lot of other benefits to accreditation. So accredited agencies are better able to defend against lawsuits and citizen complaints. Accreditation provides objective evidence of an agency's commitment to excellence in leadership, resource management, and service delivery. Government officials can be more confident in the agency's ability to operate efficiently and meet community needs. And accreditation embodies what I get a sense exists here in this community, the precepts of community-oriented policing. It creates a forum in which police and citizens work together to prevent and control challenges confronting law enforcement and provide clear direction about community expectations. Accreditation standards give the chief a proven management system of written directives, sound training, clearly defined lines of authority, and routine reports that support decision-making and resource allocation. And as you mentioned here earlier today, Mayor, officers in accredited agencies are able to take pride that they have been objectively recognized for their professionalism and adherence to the highest standards of law enforcement today. I'll close by sharing with you that at the end of this rigorous process, in this case, from the initial accreditation, they have to continue to show compliance for the following 3 years. So there's a report that is generated. And so from the report, I'll paraphrase briefly. The Morris Township Police Department, under the direction of Chief Mark DiCarlo, has achieved their reaccreditation, demonstrating his commitment to his agency to continue to adhere to state and national best practices in the field of law enforcement. The Morris Township Police Department is a professional organization with disciplined and well-trained personnel. Their leadership is progressive and forward-thinking. The high level of competence, leadership, and professionalism is evident within the agency. And at the end of that process, we do come here physically and we make sure that they show tangible and proof compliance for all the standards, many of which require more than one proof of compliance, and we typically find something. Well, that wasn't the case in the case with the Morris Township Police Department. They literally had a perfect on-site assessment. So the fact that they had no issues, as we call them, issues found, is truly remarkable for the agency. So finally, it is the opinion of the assessment team that the Morris Township Police Department is a highly professional and committed agency which exemplifies all of the tenets of law enforcement accreditation. Therefore, it is indeed my privilege tonight, on behalf of the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police and the New Jersey Law Enforcement Commission, to congratulate Chief Mark DiCarlo, Accreditation Manager Captain Robert Shearer, Accreditation Manager Kevin O'Shea, the members and staff of the Morris Township Police Department, the Mayor, the Council, and those citizens that they so proudly serve for achieving reaccreditation, joining a very exclusive group of law enforcement agencies that have made this important commitment to excellence in policing. So truly to all, congratulations.
Good job.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark DiCarlo.
Chief of Police for Morris Township Police Department. I, of course, would love to thank Harry Delgado and the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police for the terrific honor tonight. Thank you to Township Committee and all of you for allowing this presentation this evening. I want to introduce the people that really did the hard work, and that's retired Detective Lieutenant Kevin O'Shea and Captain Robert Shear. In 2016, we received accreditation under Chief McGinnis. 2019, as you can see, we received reaccreditation. It was Kevin's second time going around to the assistant in Chatham when he worked there after retirement, but it was the first time for Captain Shear and myself. I'd like to take the credit, but here's where the confession is. The hard work was done by these gentlemen, and the really hard work was done by the men and women of the Morris Township Police Department. There was 112 standards that's identified by the State Chiefs Association. It took over 740 documents to prove that we followed those 112 standards. So the easy way to describe accreditation is we have a great police force, and they do their job, they're well-rounded, and they do it from A to Z. And I'm very thankful for the men and women that we have working for us. So thank you guys. Thank you all of you. Thank you very much.
I couldn't be more proud of our police, but there are two things that are very important to me to tell you tonight. And this is about the shootings and the killings that happened in Jersey City. My father was a detective in New York City for 25 years. And we're talking back in the 50s when phone service wasn't like it is. And so we would worry almost every day, except for a 3-week vacation, as to what was going to happen to him, because the sector car would come almost every other day to leave a message or something like that for him. So that really, really hit home, because I know in some slight way how these people felt. And secondarily, I was never happier that my 2 grandchildren are in the Morris school system, and they are protected by Class 3 specials who are watching over them, who are armed, and who could prevent any such a thing as happening again. So that's my thoughts about that, but I'm so proud of you guys. Thank you very much. Okay.
And the reason Mr. Mancuso and I are standing up here separate from the dais is that we have subcommittees, and Mr. Mancuso and I are on the police subcommittee. So we work with Chief DiCarlo on a regular basis. And as I opened up, one of the reasons why Morris Township is a great place is we do have a very, very fine force. Mr. Mancuso and I have interviewed new officers who we've hired this year, and they are the finest candidates that I could imagine coming into our town. And when we've sworn them in, I've told them that they should, when they go around town, they should stop their cars, they should get out, they should introduce themselves to the residents, they should make themselves known to people, and I urge you to do the same. If you see a police officer, I urge you to stop and say hello to that police officer, introduce yourself, let them know that you appreciate the work that they do for the community, because they work hard and they put their lives on the line every day, and we should thank them. So I urge you to do that. Thanks again, Chief. Great job. Great job, guys. Thank you, Chief Delgado. Turn this around. I'm actually going to stay down here and ask Peter Gallerstein to come up. We have a plaque made up for Mr. Gallerstein, but Ms. Amelia has it in her office. We have 2 people who retired from the Board of Education this year. One we honored last month, Leonard Posey, who was leaving town, so he needed to do it in November. I had wanted to do them together. Peter Gallerstein here has been serving on our Board of Education. And again, Board of Education is a separately elected position. But all of these people, all of the people on the Board of Education are volunteers. They give their time to the community on behalf of bettering our town, bettering the education system for our kids, and they give of themselves to do that. And so on the occasion of Mr. Gallerstein's retirement from the Board of Education, Mr. Posey's retirement, I wanted to honor them. I don't have the plaque in front of me to read off all of the great things that you've done. You were on the Board of Education for how many years? 18 years of service to the community. And for that, we owe you a great debt of gratitude. You have anything you would like to say to, we have kids in the audience?
Sure,
You can address them for
well, I hope that with coming this and the police that I get a free ride on the ticket sometime in the future, but you know, when Joanne and I moved out to New Jersey almost 35 years ago, and I couldn't believe I was moving to New Jersey from New York, we picked this town and we walked around and we said we really want a town that's mixed. We don't want a homogenized white bread town, and that's what we got in Morristown. I remember my middle son, when he was in kindergarten, his two best friends were both of Latino background, and the teacher said to us, I don't understand how Andy and Pedro and Eric are such good friends, because Andy doesn't speak Spanish and those two guys don't speak a word of English, and yet they're inseparable. And if you fast forward 30 years, I actually ended up working with one of them at the hospital, who is now a full-time nurse. So I just think this is an incredible community that we've managed to live in, and I think that although some people will come up to me and say, God, we spend so much money on the schools and this and that, I mean, that's where everyone mixes. That's where everyone comes together. That's where friends are made, both short-term and long-term. And I think that, you know, you are all to be congratulated for being part of this community. I felt funny when Jeff said I was going to be honored, because frankly, I think the honor should go from me to you. It's been a privilege to be part of the school board. It's been a privilege to be part of this community, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, and it's made me feel good about myself, and so I feel very selfish in the sense that I've been on it. So I thank you for giving me the opportunity over these years to be part of this community and to be part of the schools, and that's all I can just thank you very much.
So before I present Peter with his plaque, I did want to acknowledge some Board of Education members who are in the audience. We have Nancy Bangiola from Morristown Representative. We have Melissa Spiata from Morris Township. Is there anybody else? Oh, Ann Ryan. There you are, Ann. I didn't see you back there. Very good. Thanks for coming, Ann. So on behalf of Morris Township, on behalf of the community, I'd like to present Peter Gallerstein with the Certificate of Recognition for Community Service for his 18 years of service on the Board of Education. Thank you so much. So next we're going to call up the Wildcats. Is there a coach who's going to handle the introduction? There you go.
Jeff, before we do that, could I just say one thing about
Yes.
Dr. Gallerstein?
Yeah, sure. If anybody has any comments, please.
Dr. Gallerstein is my across-the-street neighbor, along with Mrs. Gallerstein. We are very, very good friends, and on occasion we've had some political confrontations, but very, very slight. But he's a wonderful man. I respect him as much as I can, and God bless you for all your work, sir.
Okay, we have certificates for all the boards.
Great,
So
terrific.
if you're done, we'll call them up one by one.
Okay, great. Hello, I'm Mike Acolari. I am the head coach of the 7th grade Morristown Wildcat football team, which has achieved some great things these past couple of years, and I guess that's why we're here tonight. So maybe, boys, maybe you can line up over there on the side so everybody can see you in your new shirts.
Great.
So I want to thank the committee for having us here. It's always nice to be recognized. I guess to give you a little background, the reason we're here tonight is this team is a 7th grade team who just finished a season in which they won their 3rd consecutive Super Bowl championship in the New Jersey Suburban Youth Football League. So they've now won as fifth graders, sixth graders, and seventh graders, and we're also undefeated as fourth graders before they had the playoffs. So they've done some great things. In these 4 years, this team has 36 wins, 2 losses, and 2 ties, and 3 Super Bowls. So I'm super proud of them. I'm the one that gets to talk, but you know, these are the guys that do the work, and these are the guys that win the games, and coaches and parents are really proud of them. I think the one thing we learned this year, and hopefully they can take this with them throughout life, is resiliency. Going into the year, this team had never lost. Our first game this year, we lost. We were 0-1, and you know, a lot of times teams can get down on themselves, lose their confidence, and that's not at all what happened with these guys. They went on to win 3 games by large margins, and then we lose again. And I think everyone was kind of like, wow, you know, we didn't lose in 3 years, and now we're 4-2, and we were on the verge of missing the playoffs. In the last game of the year, we had to win our game just to qualify for the playoffs, and we get down 7-0 in that game. But once again, it's, you know, not about getting knocked down, it's about getting back up, and these guys did it over and over. We won that game, got to the Super Bowl, we went down 8-0 again to a team that had already beaten us, and we scored the next 37 points. So they got back up, so congratulations. Just a great bunch of guys, friends, you know, focused, and I was told going into the 7th grade year that as the kids get older, they become a lot harder to coach, especially starting in 7th grade and 8th grade, but not at all with these guys. Just great focus from day one. Great kids, and of course, you know, great kids come from great parents, and we have the best parents in the league, without a doubt. So I just want to start introducing them. That's the most important thing, I think. We're missing about 10 guys for basketball games, but
So we're going to have to introduce them in this order.
okay, no problem. Yeah, if we call your name, guys, you want me to just put them here? And yeah, if you hear your name, come on up.
Come on up, and then you're going to line up in front of the dais there, okay? So we're going to call you up one by one.
Okay. Nair Lyle is not here tonight. Number 8. Yep. Ben Gorodnik, he's here. Ben, come get your certificate, okay? And then line up. I'll hand it to you. Yeah. Rafe Servone is not with us tonight. Yeah. Sydney Williams, he's here. Lucas Reza. Two other players that aren't here are Jack Ahern and Reed Donegan. Dalton Ochab is here. Aiden Olajevans. Christian Vandergroff. Matt Bergwall is at a basketball game. Braden Kajanka. Aiden Barber is also at a game. Anthony Casal. Chase Bright. Thomas Zingo. Demetrios Mahalakakos is not here tonight. Ryan Myers. AJ Johnson. Yeah, there you go. Sorry. Justin Fiardo. Dean Carlson is not here. neither is Ryan Santoriello, but just want to mention their names, along with Eric Gem. Aiden Sorsby. Trey Friday. Julian Eisenberg. And Alex Davis. We also have two assistant coaches here tonight, Todd Kajenka and Joe Savage. Couldn't do it without those guys either.
We have certificate of excellence and congratulations to the coaches as well. So guys, if you could come up as well. So
Yep, that's me.
That's you?
Chip Bergwall is one of our coaches, and Todd who's coming up. And then Mike and Ryan Flynn both also help out with the team. And Joe Savage is here.
So why don't we, I don't know if we can get a picture, right? Yeah. Jim's all ready to go.
All right.
Why don't you guys, you want to come up back up here? Sure. You guys stand, everybody stand up. Or the township committee can stand up.
Thank you.
All right, congratulations, guys. Before you guys go, I want you to remember that you guys practice at Cornine Field, right?
Yes.
In Morris Township.
Beautiful field.
Beautiful field, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we used to practice right here in Morris Township.
So beautiful.
Right. So next year, if you guys come back, I hope your shirts say Morris Township Wildcats. Think about it, okay?
Like the Giants in New York.
Thanks, guys. We're gonna take a 2-minute break to let all these guys out of the room, and then we'll continue with the presentation. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, might as well.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay.
He loses money on every note, he takes his money.
Okay, so we're going to call the meeting back to order. At the beginning of this year, we had several conversations up here on the dais on the topic of vaping. We had a proposed ordinance, anti-vaping ordinance, that we discussed on the dais, and the result of that is that the Township Committee wanted to look at the issue a little bit more. Anne Marie Feldman, who's going to be making this presentation, is a Morris Township resident. She approached me and asked if she could, as part of her master's degree, is this your thesis?
It's called fieldwork.
It's her fieldwork. It's her fieldwork project on behalf of her master's degree. She asked if she could do some work in the area of underage vaping, since we had brought it up earlier in this year, and I took her up immediately on her offer, and she is here tonight to share with us what she has learned over the last few months. So she prefers not to use the microphone. She's just going to talk to the audience. And you'll take questions after.
Yeah, at the end, I would be happy to take any questions. So, as
Mayor, we may need the microphone for the video.
Yes, it is recording.
Yeah.
Do we have a we have the handheld microphone, I'm sure, right?
On YouTube?
can I use the
Yeah.
Is this on? Okay.
That's great.
All right. At least I'm cordless. Okay, so as Mayor Grayfeld said, I reached out to him because I needed to do field work to complete my MPH at the College of St. Elizabeth. So what that entails is a public health project, because it's a Master's of Public Health, and I have to do at least 90 hours free work for something that will progress the town, and I chose underage vaping because it's always been just an interesting subject to me, and I started my MPH 2 years ago, and the very first presentation I did was on vaping, so I feel like I've come full circle, and yet we know not a whole lot more now than we did 2 years ago. So anyway, we could probably skip the first two slides, because that's just a brief recap of what happened here with the project miles. Okay, so what is vaping? I'm sure everybody's familiar with vaping, but just to rehash vaping again. Vaping or juuling, if you hear somebody say, I want to rip my Juul, that means that they want to take a puff off of their Juul. So it's the verb of inhaling the aerosol that gets heated up inside a vape mod or a Juul. It's not vapor, it's aerosol. And in the public health sector, we refer to it as ENDS. So on the CDC website and the FDA and the NIH, you'll always see the word ENDS, and that's just electronic nicotine delivery system. So here's just a couple of historical tidbits about ENDS. It says that the first ENDS were introduced in 2007 in the U.S. We didn't really see a surgence of the problem till around 2015, and you'll see why later in the presentation. But as you can see, Juul owns most of the circle of, and I'm sure you've all heard of Juul. There's a couple of other brands on there that kids use, underage vapors use, but Juul is like the #1 brand, probably because it looks like a USB. So it's very easy to hide, and kids can put it up the sleeve of their sweatshirt. They can put it in their sweatshirt. I have a couple of pictures of sweatshirts that are specifically made for vaping, so you can put your Juul inside and you vape into one string and you blow it out the other. But there's like a whole lingo, too, of the vape underground where kids will inhale and then they'll wait long enough where when they exhale, there is no aerosol. So that means that they're absorbing the maximum amount of chemicals. And of course, a lot of them think that it's just vapor and it's just nicotine and it's really not going to hurt them. It's not like a cigarette. So, let's keep going. So this is just like a spattering of some of the typical vape products out there on the market. The lower left is what you'll see on like the CDC website. Juul is in the upper right. So there's a mod, which is like the dark black one in the middle. Those are refillable. So you buy that, and then you buy e-liquid, which I have to bring up in New Jersey, like a 7-Eleven or a non-vape shop. They are no longer allowed to sell e-container liquid. They can only sell pre-filled pods. So that's a step in the right direction. The Juul pods at the top, those are all pre-filled, and if you go on the Juul website, you will no longer see those colored ones because they've removed all of the flavors because they're trying to be good corporate citizens. It's a repeat of the 1980s for those of you who are in my age bracket. It's almost amusing. So this is just a graphic from the CDC and the FDA. There was a 78% uptick in vaping between 2017 and 2017 and 2018, and then another 30% increase between 2018 and 2019. So this is certainly not going away. It's not a fad. It's an epidemic, and it's getting worse and worse. And this is just a little bit of the red arrows are, unfortunately, in public health, when we see a red arrow, it means that we're missing a goal. So you can see that the numbers that we want to be going down are actually going up. The only good news is that cigarette smoking is going down, but we suspect it's because kids who would experiment with cigarettes are now experimenting with vaping instead. So it's not that we have kicked the nicotine habit, they're just doing it in a different form. And one last thing about the previous slide, you don't have to go back if you don't want to. Kids who do vape, 20% of them go on and smoke cigarettes versus 4% of kids who don't vape. So that's significant. And 32% of people, this is the general population, who even try nicotine get hooked. And if you do mathematical, I could probably have Jacob do this in his head, or Alex, but tobacco is probably the highest drug on that whole chart, including heroin, to get people hooked on. That's how addictive it is. And what is the big deal? So I'm going to read this. I don't usually read from slides, but it's a quote, so I don't want to mess it up. So adolescent nicotine exposure influences long-term molecular, biochemical, and functional changes in the brain that encourage subsequent drug use. And when they use nicotine or another addictive substance, their brain is creating synapses to remember how to be addicted to that substance. So just like you want your kid to learn a language or a musical instrument when they're young because the teacher says that will build those synapses in their brain so they will learn that for the rest of their lives, it's the same thing with addiction. The earlier they get addicted, the longer they'll be addicted, even throughout middle age. And this is just an infographic from the CDC. These are some of the compounds that you will see in vape aerosol. VOCs, which we all know, we avoid them at all costs. They're in paint, they're in, a bunch of chemicals, gasoline. There's ultrafine particles, which unfortunately, the ultrafine particles in the aerosol are so small that they can't be coughed out. So they're absorbed by the lung, and nicotine crosses the brain barrier. There's heavy metals. Most of the vape mods and devices that were tested found lead in the aerosol, which is another neurotoxin, and of course cancer chemicals. And I think they stopped using diacetyl. That's the one that's linked to popcorn lung, if anybody knows what that is. It's the preservative that they use, like when they're making popcorn and popcorn plants. And the workers were getting popcorn lung from inhaling this, and it's in most of the flavors. And like I said, I think it's been removed, but probably replaced with another chemical. Okay, so in the middle of my field work, doing this with the health department here, was the outbreak of E-Valley. That's the e-cigarette vaping associated lung illness that broke out in the middle of the summer, where people were coming to hospitals with symptoms of cough, shortness of breath, diarrhea, fever, and it was unexplainable because there was no virus, no bacteria. So the CDC got right on this and put together like a task force. And every week the numbers are updated. So tomorrow, these numbers on my presentation will be no longer up to date. So we have about 2,400 people that have been hospitalized and 50, I think there were 52 deaths. And this has hit every state, including Alaska. And 54% of the patients were under 24. 16% were under 18. This is just sort of a summary of what the CDC has found. And they haven't actually come out and said that like pre-filled pods were the culprit because they don't really want to come out and say that. But in most of the cases, the person had modified their vape with THC or a CBD oil or some other thing that they shouldn't have been vaping. So fortunately, I guess we can say that it's good that none of the pre-filled products were the problem. And there was a double lung transplant performed on a 17-year-old for the first time. And, unfortunately, if you look on the CDC website, a lot of these kids are going to have permanent lung damage. This is not something that you go on steroids and then you recover. They'll never be the same. So where do they get them? From the National Youth Tobacco Survey, about 13 to 23% of the kids get them at retail vape shops. Only about 6.5% from online, and the rest of them get them from dealers at school and friends and families. So I know Juul is doing some stuff to help this. They're going to start limiting the amount of Juul pods that you can purchase in one transaction, and they're also going to start putting serial numbers on the Juul device itself. So when you get caught and you're underage, you can trace that back to the retailer that sold it. Right now, they're only doing this in Texas, but they plan to roll it out. These are the places in Morris Township where you can purchase vape supplies. And again, a lot of kids who probably live in Morris Township are getting them from people at school, so it's not necessarily because they're buying them from these places. But it's good to be aware because these are the 4 places that do sell them. So it's good to know when your kids want to go to these places, why are they going there? And why do they do it? So this is actually an older reference at the bottom where it says 81% said that they started vaping because of the flavors. A newer youth tobacco survey came out just this week that basically said it's split. So about 30% did it because they were enticed by flavors, and the rest of them did it because friends and family were all doing it. So it's a sense of belonging, much like smoking was back in the 80s. You smoked because all of your friends and family smoked, now it's vaping. So this is the kind of images that our kids are exposed to online. They think that, this is the vape nation. So cool, tattooed, bearded, pierced people vaping, and they're doing tricks and whatnot with their aerosol. The reality is the money from all of these vaping supplies are going to extremely wealthy billionaires who own the companies, because Philip Morris, amongst other big tobaccos, have now bought the majority of companies like Juul. So it's just big tobacco in a different package. So on the left is the sweatshirt that I referenced earlier. So you can put your vape inside and you vape in one of the strings and you blow it out in the other. So you can do it right in class. The teacher doesn't know because they're usually busy doing, teaching. So, and on the right, it's not enough that they're inhaling chemicals. They want to now put artificial colors in there also, so that's even better. They look so cool. Yeah, skip that. We're going to skip the how-to video. Yeah. So this is like what's next on the horizon, especially for companies like Philip Morris. They plan on making about $17 billion next year and annually after that. It's called IQOS. And instead of a cigarette where you light it on fire and burn the tobacco and smoke it, this is you heat it and inhale it. So there's not a whole lot of cigarette smoke smell, and you still get the hit off of the nicotine the way a regular cigarette is, because that's one thing that vaping sort of has failed at, mimicking the initial hit of nicotine that you get off a cigarette. And there's no ash. These are very expensive. I mean, it's $149, but one of my nephews was a big vapor, and he spent almost $1,000 on all of the various parts that he made his own mod. So where there's a will, there's a way. They will get the money. So these are some of the things that we have to do to basically cut this off at the knees. We have to enforce the government bans on flavorings, because kids really will not be as drawn to it if it's not mango or Fruit Loops or Starburst. And it's already been passed in New Jersey a little bit. They prohibit any of the marketing on public transit, so that's a good step. And then we have to make it cost prohibitive, so it will not be like cigarettes are almost too expensive for a high schooler to buy. We have to do the same thing with vaping. And we have raised the age to 21, and we have to do more checks on the brick and mortar places to make sure that they're not selling to underage kids. And this is just a framework. We don't have to go through this, obviously, but there are frameworks out there for schools to follow. So if they don't know what to do, luckily our school system here does have the vaping in their code of conduct, so they have covered this. So I'm just going to briefly go into a couple of things. People are always looking for treatment for their kids. Like, how do you do this? Because they can't go on the patch without a prescription. They can't get nicotine gum or anything like that. So there are some programs out there. This one is probably the easiest one because it's all online. And this is actually being used in schools as like during a suspension, an in-school suspension. If the kid is caught vaping or has vape products with them, they have to go through this Aspire program from the American Lung Association. And you can't like get out of it without actually going through each module, and it's reported to the teacher. So at least they're doing something to educate themselves on vaping. And then there's Project X and a whole bunch of other, we can go to the next slide. So these are all the resources, and I actually have paper copies for people if they just want to take them. There's resources for parents where you can actually sign up and get some coaching on how to talk to your kids about this, because kids don't like to talk about this. The whole, you know, sexiness behind vaping is that it's really sneaky and nobody knows you're doing it. So the last thing that they want you to do is actually confront them about it and talk to them. That's really uncomfortable. But the more you do it, the more they'll listen to you, and they won't be able to ignore you anymore. Okay. And these are just the CDC recommendations. You know, there's really two issues here. There's vaping, and then there's the lung issue that we're having. And the lung issue that we're having, the CDC says people should not be using anything in their vape products that wasn't made for the vape product, period. And they really don't want people vaping at all, so they stick that in there, of course. And then they also have some sanitary things that, unfortunately, I think kids, when they go in the bathroom and they're all vaping and they're ripping off their jewels and they're sharing all of this, I could be wrong, but I think that we've had like an uptick in mono across certain counties, and it could be because of this. I'm not sure, but you know, they put their vape in the bathroom and they put it somewhere so they can go back later and get it. And we all know, like, industrial strength toilets have a powerful flush, and the spray goes all over. So these are not sanitary conditions, and they're putting them in their mouths and inhaling them. So this is just a sort of for an adult who's vaping. These are kind of some safety features. suggestions that you should follow. And then these are just some of the New Jersey regulations that have gone into effect, which I won't bore everybody with. And the public health implications are huge. So it's about $300 billion a year that we spend now in public health costs for smokers. And if we're going to be creating a whole new generation of smokers, and it looks like we are because kids who vape go on to smoke more than kids who don't, it's going to be a huge cost to the public health system. And that's it. So does anybody have questions? Yes? Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to some of the specifics, medically or chemically, why aerosol is so much worse than vapor, or is it more of just that it's not vapor, that they're lying to you that it's actually aerosol? Second question, in regards to the point that you made about addiction and that you're getting neural pathways that are making you more susceptible to further addiction, can you speak to the level of nicotine that's being consumed in vape products versus, say, a traditional cigarette?
Sure. So the first question, just because I know they might not hear this on the video, you asked about why we think aerosol is so much worse than vapor, because I think that traditionally the definition of vapor is just water. So it's not vapor. It's not like you're just inhaling in water like from a humidifier. It's aerosol, which contains chemicals, and some of the ones that were on the infographic from the CDC. So they always make a distinction between that, like do not call it vapor because it's not, it's aerosol because it's shooting into your lungs also. It's not like floating in the air. Yeah, and then your second question was? The amount of nicotine. Okay, well the only one that I can speak to for sure is Juul, because I know that they sell their pods in 3% nicotine and 5% nicotine, which is interesting because they claim that it's a smoking cessation tool. And if that were the case, then why aren't there 1% pods and 0% pods? So, yeah. But when you purchase an e-container of nicotine, you can add that to your mod and make it as strong as you want. Juul is unique because they use nicotine salts, which I guess is chemically much more powerful than regular nicotine liquid. So you get more bang for your buck. And I know one riff off of Juul is the equivalent to one cigarette. So a pod should be the equivalent to a pack of cigarettes. And the problem is if you're just doing this all day long, you're not really keeping track of how many you've done versus like a pack of cigarettes. You have the visual. So I think that's also a problem. Right, and you don't have any idea what you're doing, because really, how are you going to keep track of how many puffs you've taken off your Juul in a conversation? I don't think I would. Yeah. So, but there's much more scientific evidence about the aerosol on the NIH website. So if you're curious about like the ins and outs, they've done so much testing and found so many different chemicals, which is the problem, because even though it's under the FDA, under like the Clean Air Act and nicotine, they just included it. So most of the vape companies won't actually have to comply with FDA testing until May of next year. And it's going to be very costly, so it's probably going to drive all of the smaller vape companies out, and then the big ones will be left.
Mm-hmm. The combination of nicotine and dosing is a deadly compound. If these people are vaping, can you OD on nicotine? I guess is question number one. Question number two, I'm sensing that, because there's no burning involved in aerosol, that when someone says, oh, it's not as bad, you don't get the tar that you get with smoking cigarettes, there must be, you need to have a comeback, to that, and saying, well, it's not as bad.
Right. Okay. So the question was, is the tar in the nicotine, the tar in the other chemicals as bad? Right. Can you OD on nicotine, your question? You can OD on nicotine through your skin. I don't know if you can OD on nicotine vaping. I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody doing that. Yes.
So in that case, you could add nicotine and you add enough where you can actually overdose.
I'm sure you could. I think that in practicality, if you added so much nicotine that it was going to make you ill, you would know it on the first puff, and then you would get all of the nicotine, like, sort of overdose symptoms, like racing heart, sweating, you know, you start feeling nausea, and so hopefully that would stop you from taking another puff. So I don't, and like I said, I don't know of any cases where somebody has inhaled nicotine and overdose, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. I can check. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, as far as I know, the difference, that's sort of two questions. So you can get a burning sensation when you inhale, because I've watched videos of kids and they say that, like, that first experience is usually kind of harsh. But Juul has come up with a formula that makes it so it's not harsh and it's smooth when you inhale. The other side to that is it really less harmful? It is. And in the UK, they're very pro-vape because they have such a cigarette problem still in that country that if they can get somebody to stop smoking regular cigarettes and switch over to vape, then they're pleased with that. That's not the case here. If we now encourage people to vape instead of smoking, I feel like we're going backwards again, because you're just giving up one addiction for another. Yeah. There's a hand over here. Yeah. The cost. Yeah. Yes. Some states have already enacted astronomical taxes, like Vermont. They tax vape products at 98%. So it's made it so economically prohibitive for the vape companies that they don't do business there anymore. So I don't know any other state yet who has done it to that extreme, and I don't know if New Jersey has any. Has anybody heard of any New Jersey incentives for taxing vape products yet? I think they're tackling the flavors first. The 21 they already did, and then also prohibiting anybody, like in Morristown, they've actually passed an ordinance where you can only sell any vape products if you're a vape shop, which means 51% of your products are vape products. So you can't go to 7-Eleven anymore or other places like that and buy vape. Yeah. But I can check on that also. Mhm. Right. Right. Well, if they should do that for cigarettes too, but they don't, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, that's why I always tell Kevin and Liz that, you know, public health people really need to get more involved in politics, because it's not often, you don't often hear the public health view or voice in the political world, because we're usually just busy doing research and things like that. But it's all together. That's right. We are. Yes. Yeah. You have a question? I do not.
What would your recommendation be for the voters of New Jersey next year to be voting on the ballot item to legalize marijuana in the entire state?
That's a loaded question, and I have no expertise in marijuana whatsoever, so I would not feel qualified. I know for sure you shouldn't smoke marijuana through your vape. That's right. Especially if people are doing it themselves and they're not getting it from like a marijuana dispensary where it's a pre-filled pod. Like if they're going to start, you know, because it looks to me like most of the time we're getting ourselves in trouble. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of gray area, you know, because there's medicinal marijuana that can really help a lot of people who really need it, like cancer patients and other people. And then, you know, and then there's recreational. And to me, it's sort of like it's all a big category of mind-numbing addiction. And the root cause of why are you seeking it out? Why are you seeking out marijuana or vaping or alcohol? It's, you know, this is just vaping now. In 10 years, it's going to be something different. So I think we really need to use these statistics that we know to drill down and figure out what the real problem is. And we haven't figured that out yet. That's right. Yep. I do not know that. I don't know. I think that would be discriminatory because I believe that addiction is a disability. So, okay. I'm going to...
Very good. Thank you so much. Now, Anne Marie mentioned that the number one thing on her list of things to do is to ban flavored products. And I want to give a shout out to Jersey City, Mayor Steve Fulop and the council there, being the first city in the state of New Jersey to put forward an ordinance to ban flavored vape products in Jersey City. It's something I think our legislation committee should be looking at for next year. So before we continue on the agenda, Mr. Quinn is going to put a graphic up on the wall. Later on in the agenda, we added something new for Morris Township this year. It's not something that I've seen anywhere else in the state of New Jersey, but we are making great efforts this past year to communicate more and more with our residents, let them know what we're doing. And we have an infographic of our accomplishments for 2019, which we're going to review later in the year, but we're going to put them up on the wall for everybody to look at as we go through the rest of the agenda. Yes. So as Mr. Quinn's doing it, the next item on the agenda is public comment and inquiry. We actually have two sections for public comment and inquiry. Would anybody like to make a public comment or make an inquiry at this time? There'll be another opportunity. Sure, come on up. There'll be another opportunity at the end of the meeting as well. For the record, your name and address.
Sure. My name is William Sisti, 27 Rayner Road in Morristown.
Morris Township.
Morris Township, correct. Two questions related. First was I put a request in about a storm drain damage on Starlight. It's right by 33. The work order, the request on the website was closed pretty quick. There's a cone on it that's now kind of sinking into the hole. Is that road going to be repaired soon? That's why they're kind of letting it go? Or what's the action plan on that?
Mr. Quinn, I think I need to defer to you on that one. What's the address again?
It's there's two storm drains on either side of 33 Starlight. Basically, the hole's getting quite large. We can kind of see into the storm drain now.
Will, do you want to pull that podium a little bit back so the light's not in your face? There you go.
They're just acknowledging the request now. That goes into our basin repair. We have a crew that does basin repair.
Okay.
And that'll be on the list for the basin repairs as we move forward with manpower. And right now it depends on whether and when they can do those repairs.
Okay. It's getting quite bad.
Yeah, basically when the DPW when you put it on the website there, then he goes and has to foreman inspect it, and once that inspection's done, then they close out the request. But on our internal ones, we have that for the base and repair crew.
Cool, all right. And then the second one is I've seen survey crews around Rayner and the Butterworth neighborhood. Just curious what's happening. Rumor is it's a sidewalk project.
No. Well, it's a lot of things.
Okay.
We are doing a total road reconstruction, which means drainage, curbing, and we do consider sidewalks in those. Right now, we're doing the survey work for that. We did get a grant from the state of New Jersey for approximately $500,000 towards that project. They're doing the survey work now. Once we have the survey work done, then it will go out to bid, and we will actually, before it goes out to bid, we'll have a neighborhood meeting, have all the residents come in and look at the design work, talk about it, and that's when we talk about sidewalks and road width and everything else. As you know, it's a narrow road, so some people will lose frontage.
You could take mine frontage, it's fine.
Okay, but you'll have the opportunity once we finish up the survey work and the plans, then we'll do the neighborhood meeting, and then once that is done, then we'll put it up to bid. So I expect that project to go sometime late summer.
Cool, all right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If you have another question, please come to the microphone.
Norm Yanosol, 5 Terry Drive, Morris Township. I'm inquiring on 6 Terry Drive. I am the pest. I've been sending emails over the past 5 years of my neighbor building his apartment complex, which currently, I believe, the realtor who's selling the house said it had, I think, let me see how it goes. The buyer told me, and I talked to the buyer of the house, the way I heard it, the realtor was going around saying it had 3 separate apartments with bathrooms and kitchens in it, and it was like 4 apartments. And the buyer said he was buying it. I think who's in the other neighbor who's buying it? He flips houses. He said that he was in it, and he had 4 separate washrooms with dryers and washers in it, sets in it, in the house. And he was hoping to get that with the house. He was disappointed. He said the 6 Terry Drive pulled out of the contract, and I think I sent an email, and Mr. Quinn sent me an email back saying the deal was still on the day later. So I'm inquisiting what's going on. The renters are still there. You know, there's 3 separate people among the owner living there.
Right.
So what is the story?
There is a lot going on, but I'm not going to discuss it in public. If you'd like to give me a call, I would ask you to do so. We were in court the other night, but there's a lot of personal matters. But it is getting very close to being resolved. I'm happy to discuss with you either in person or by telephone tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
There's some personal things, and once I speak with you, you'll understand.
I know he's dying. I mean, he's dying of some disease, and you know, and he wanted to stay told. And I don't know if I know he's been ill for a while and falling, which to me he's been a sociopath to me. Living there, he's hit 3 cars of mine, took off. He hit somebody else. What was it? A month ago, and you guys came and arrested him and charged him and took his car away. Why didn't the police, after the 3rd complaint, go and which they have a right to do, to ask for a physical on the man, just take him off the road? Because I don't know what other accidents he had in the time.
Before you go any further, I don't want to have a public trial of a resident here. The issue is with the house itself.
Yes.
Before us. It's just so that people know it's a single-family home that somebody has tried to subdivide into apartments.
He has. He built like 4.
We're on top of it. We're on top of it. Mr. Quinn said that we've been in court.
And it can't be, title cannot transfer until all those items that he did to the house without permits are removed. And his attorney is aware of that. They've acknowledged that. And we're working on getting everybody out of there.
Okay, the way I understood your email was that you had an agreement with the buyer that he was going to go put it into...
And things have some changed.
Okay.
And they were all in court and went before the judge on Monday night. And we're going back into court in January. Most likely he will no longer be with us at that time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And just so everybody understands, it's not legal to subdivide your house into apartments. If you do, you have to come before the Planning Board or Board of Adjustment if you were to get an approval to do such. But In this case, we're taking care of this one incident. Yeah. Please, name and address.
Mitch Stanko, 17 Bell Drive, Morris Township. I didn't come to the meeting to make a statement, but I'm going to take the opportunity since it presents itself here.
Sure.
Driving down Bell Drive from James Street, there are a lot of trees right on the right of way, both sides of the street, that are township trees, and they lean into the street. Some of the trees have major branches at the bottom of the tree that goes at a steep angle over the street. And driving down this morning with all the ice on the trees, I was just concerned. I don't think there's a problem right now, but perhaps somebody could look at it and make a determination if those branches that are leaning out over the street could be taken down. Thank you.
We will have our DPW come out and take a look. And anytime anybody is concerned about a tree, whether they think it's dying or falling over, please call it in, and we will come out and take a look. So we'll mark that down. And if you'd like a follow-up, feel free to call Mr. Quinn. Very good. Anybody else like to be heard right now? Okay, if not, we are going to move on to ordinances. We have 6 ordinances for hearing and final consideration. Just so everybody understands, with an ordinance, we cannot carry legislation from one year to the next, because this body, there are elections and the body might be reconstituted. So it's law that all legislation has to be completed within a calendar year. So we have these remaining items from the year 2019. So, Mr. Mills, could you read into the record 28-19?
By title, amending Chapter 95 of the zoning ordinance of the Township of Morris to eliminate the RH20 zone and to remove all references to the same.
Very good. And just a little explanation to that. Earlier this year, we had one property in the RH20 zone, which was the county jail, which wasn't appropriately in the zone, so we removed it from the zone. And since there are no other properties in the RH20 zone in Morris Township, I asked that the RH20 zone be removed from our code so that nobody could come into the planning board and say, we want to build, and RH20 means 20 units per acre. So we will no longer be zoned in Morris Township to allow 20 units per acre on a lot as we had previously. So can somebody make a motion to move that?
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Second. And with any public hearing and final consideration, we open it up to the public once we have it introduced. If anybody would like to make comment or a question, 2819, please approach the microphone. And seeing nobody, I will ask for a roll call.
Mr. Arbaniti?
Yes.
Mr. Dorothy?
Yes.
Mr. Maxuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Griswold?
Yes. I, Jeffrey Grazel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same, and direct the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Mr. Mills, 2919.
Amends Chapter 57, Part 1, Article 1, Section 53, Subsection 3 of the Land Development Ordinance and Chapter 95, Part 1, Article 4, Section 31, Subsection 8, Paragraph 2, to allow for porticos.
And a little bit of explanation on that. People would have to come to our planning board to add a little portico over their, like a little front porch, you know, a covering over their front porch. They used to have to come to the planning board to get that approval. If that portico might have encroached the setback from the street, we deemed that for something of a certain size, and you can read the size in the ordinance language itself, that the engineering department should be able to approve that administratively instead of forcing a resident to come before the planning board. That's the reason for this ordinance. Will somebody move 2919? Good. Second? Very good. And with that second, I will open it up to public commentary. Anybody have a question or comment about 2919? And seeing none, I will ask for a roll call.
Mr. Arbaniti?
Yes.
Mr. Dorothy?
Yes.
Mr. Maxuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Griswold?
Yes. I, Jeffrey Grazel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed. Approve the same and direct that the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Mr. Mills, 30-19.
Modifies and amends Article 32 regarding the Historic Preservation Commission.
Very good. So this ordinance has to deals with historic structures within Morris Township. The Historic Preservation Committee came to us and said that we should be doing a better job of protecting historic structures in our town, from people being allowed to change the facade, the front look of a historic structure, and they asked us to take a look at an ordinance that might regulate that. It came before the planning board, so we introduced it. It went to the planning board. There were lots of questions at the planning board level about how exactly this should take shape, what historic districts should be included, specific homes that might be included, and what we decided at the planning board, because Deputy Mayor Wilson and myself also sit on the planning board, we decided to push this to 2020 so that we could better map out the historic structures within the municipality before we moved ahead with an ordinance that would affect so many of those structures. Does that adequately cover it? And yeah, we're not able to table it because we can't carry legislation from one year to the next. So I am going to make a motion to rescind our introduction of this and that we are going to reintroduce in 2020. Is that the proper way to do it, Mr. Mills?
As chair under Roberts, you shouldn't be making motions, but you could call for one.
Okay. I will call for a motion to rescind this with the expectation that we're going to reintroduce it in 2020. Wait a second.
Second.
All in
Discussion, I guess, first.
Should we open it up for public discussion?
No.
Does anybody on the dais have a comment about it? I know you were at the Historic Preservation Committee meeting. Do you want to fill us in?
Actually, the meeting was canceled because of the weather.
Oh, okay.
But, this ordinance has been a while in coming, and I'm very supportive of taking action on this. But the language as written, references a map that the county produced that shows 11 different historic neighborhoods in Morris Township, and every structure within all of those neighborhoods is classified as historic. So it's our feeling that that's perhaps too broad of a definition, and it's also significant that we have 3 neighborhoods on the map where we're trying this out now, even though the official ordinance is being rescinded. The planning department, or the engineering department, and the Historic Preservation Commission are going to be working together and treating those properties as if the ordinance was in effect, in part to sort of scope out how the ordinance would work if it was in effect, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's basically what we're looking at here is working on the map, refining the definition, and then refining the language in the ordinance, coming back in January. Or perhaps it may take a little longer than that.
Very good.
But to get the language in the ordinance so that it's, sort of more specific than it is right now.
Okay. Mr. Jerky, do you have a question?
Yeah, Mayor, I just want to say that I think most residents and most, probably the whole committee on the dais, understands the importance of preserving our history, especially in this area of the country where we have such, roots, especially with Morristown and the Revolutionary War. I think preserving our structures that are deemed historic by the Commission is a worthy cause, and I hope that this becomes a priority early on in next year's term.
Very good. Any comment? Very good. So, do we take a roll call or just a voice vote, Mr. Mills?
Take a roll call because you were saying. Take it?
Sorry, roll call.
Either way, you can never go wrong with a roll call.
Right.
There you go.
That's peaches.
Mr. Arbanese?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Yes. Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Griswold?
Yes. So 3019 has been rescinded. Next on the agenda is 3119. Mr. Mills?
An ordinance to prohibit the use of plastic bags and regulate the use of paper bags by retail establishments within the township of Morris.
So this ordinance would prohibit local businesses from distributing takeaway plastic bags. It is an initiative that comes out of Environmental Commission this year, and I'll leave it at that. We'll have some commentary once we introduce it. So will somebody move 3119?
Move it.
Second. So Kathy, why don't you make some comments since you were involved in that? I'll make some comments as well.
Okay. This ordinance came out of our Environmental Commission, and what it does is it eliminates the single-use plastic bags, a limited range of them. There's a long section in the ordinance about all the plastic bags that are not subject to the ban. For example, vegetable bags that are in the produce section, and it's basically focused on plastic bags that are used for carryout, such as you might get in a grocery store. So, and the ordinance is about really the sort of push behind it is let's change our habits. Let's acknowledge how bad plastic bags are for our environment, and let's work to change our habits. So it doesn't actually go into effect until July. There's 6 months to, for us to get ready for it. Our environmental commission will be working with our businesses to prepare for it, and we'll also. We have worked with this. There's a coalition of towns that have worked together. It's really great, sharing ideas. There's many examples of sharing language on the ordinance and working together to, to enact this region-wide, which is a great thing. So, anyway, it's a great deal of work went into this. There was a lot of drilling down on the details of what is, a lot of it was what is not included in this, what the penalties are. Once it does go into effect, if you forget to bring your plastic bag, you can purchase a paper bag for 10 cents. But we're not encouraging that. The theme, the push will be let's bring reusable bags, and that's where changing habits is really what we're going after.
Very good. Does anybody else have a comment before I open it up?
To comment that the Environmental Commission also worked to survey the businesses themselves, and most of the businesses, I believe, that would be affected were okay or supportive of this initiative. So I think it's important that we note that we, for this initiative, have been working with the local businesses who would be directly impacted, and it wouldn't be a net negative for them, which I think is a positive thing.
Very good. Any other comments? So my personal view on this is the most important thing to me in this world is clean drinking water. If we can't drink water that's clean, I think the human race is doomed. And there is a rising issue with microplastics in the drinking water itself. And these plastic bags break down, and it's known that they break down to microplastic particulate, and that ends up in our drinking water. So while there's many steps that need to be taken to protect our drinking water, this is the first step of several, but you have to start a journey with a first step, and we are taking that first step here in Morris Township, not to try to inconvenience anybody from having their plastic bag, but in the long term to protect our drinking water. So with that comment, since it is a public hearing, I am going to open it up for public commentary. If anybody has a comment or a question about Ordinance 3119, please come to the microphone. I think we do have one person.
Hello, my name is Alex Ambrose, and I live at 42 Village Drive. So I'm also here, I'm not only here as a resident of Morris Township, I'm also here representing my organization, ANJAC, the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. If you're familiar with our Environmental Commission, you're probably familiar with ANJAC. My organization, our main goal is to provide resources for local environmental commissions to make good decisions and to help support their township council or township committee to make good decisions, such as this ordinance. So, thankfully, you guys talked a lot about what I was going to talk about, which is great, the importance of moving towards a reusable culture. There are just a few points that I want to emphasize that you guys talked about. So something exciting is that recently New Jersey passed over 100 ordinances, local ordinances, restricting plastic use of some kind. So we have balloons, polystyrene, plastic bags, and plastic straws. So over 100 ordinances, and over 50 municipalities specifically ban plastic bags, which is very exciting. So we are moving forward on that. It's important to have some kind of ban fee hybrid, which you do have in this ordinance. because it is important to move towards a reusable culture. So if we just ban plastic bags, there's going to be an increase in paper. And paper not only uses more natural resources, the cutting down of trees, it still increases waste, and paper is more expensive because you can store less of it. So it ends up costing the store more because there's more demand, and we're already seeing huge back orders for paper bags in some places because they didn't put some kind of fee. So importance of banning paper, so good job on that. Education is very important, so I'm very excited to hear that the Environmental Commission is going to be working on that. One big thing is people love having those signs in the parking lot saying, remember your reusable bags, because I have walked into a store and then immediately walked out multiple times because I did not remember my reusable bag. And there's plenty of funds available through Clean Communities funds, through Sustainable Jersey grants. So if municipalities are interested in handing out even branded bags, there are several grants and funds available because this is a great initiative that a lot of people in New Jersey are working on. And it's very important that we have an ordinance, and it's not just a voluntary movement. On Highland Park, they tried a voluntary Simply Education campaign, and they only saw a 15% reduction in plastic bag usage. Once they implemented the ban fee hybrid, they saw an 80% reduction in all bags. So it is important that we do have this ban and not just a voluntary campaign. I'm also working very closely on the state bill. However, there is no guarantee that that's going to happen. So a lot of municipalities are telling us, hey, why should we do this? You know, that we keep hearing word that the state is going to act. Unfortunately, that bill has stalled, and they only have 2 weeks to pass it before the new session is up. And right now, there's no guarantee that that's going to happen, which doesn't make my life very easy, but it makes me very happy that my hometown is working on this. So it's time to join the 50 other municipalities in New Jersey that have this already. And thank you, all of you, for making New Jersey a cleaner and healthier place. So on behalf of Morris Township and ANJAC, I want to say thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I don't have I have a comment. I want to thank you for coming in, and thank you for working with ANJAC. ANJAC was very helpful to us. We looked at their model ordinance, and we went to presentations that you guys did. And ANJAC was an important part also of the coalition. So there's a lot of good connections there, and I appreciate your comments.
Really all we did was just make people talk to each other. It was a lot of the local grassroots support of all the environmental commissions, and we kind of just put them in touch with each other. And now
that's very important. that talking with each other and sharing ideas and working together, very important.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have comments on 31-19? So before we close the public commentary, I did get a letter that I will enter into the record. I'm going to give Mrs. Emilio a copy of it, but I'll just read an excerpt. It's Dear Mayor Grazel, the Great Swamp Watershed Association, GSWA, is dedicated to protecting and improving the water resources of the Passaic River region from the Great Swamp headwaters to Newark Bay, including Morris Township. Microplastics are a serious and growing concern in freshwater systems. They are defined as particles less than 5 millimeters. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Plastics pose a problem environmentally, impacting the health of our waters, the creatures that depend on the clean water, and they pose a human health risk, impacting our potable waters. Using this data, GSWA advocates, the data that they reference in their letter, advocates to enact change in our communities to reduce the source of these plastics in our waters. GSWA supports the adoption of the Morris Township Ordinance to ban single-use plastics. So again, Mrs. Newy, I will send you a copy of this letter, which I'm reading off of my phone, for the public record. And with that, may I ask for a roll call?
Mr. Arbenades? Yes. Mr. Jarfi?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Griswold?
Yes. I, Jeffrey Grazel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same, and direct that the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Mr. Mills, 32-19.
Appropriating
appropriating $195,000 available in the general fund balance to provide for various capital improvements by the Township of Morris.
Very good. Okay. And, sorry, I meant to flip to this earlier. Mr. Quinn, can you remind us of the exact projects that are included in this, here, I have it here. $195,000 that's available in the general capital fund that is going towards purchase of body-worn cameras and including equipment and software, licensing and technical service upgrades for that equipment, DPW fuel management system, and sidewalks improvements as set forth in the project filed in the engineering department, and that project specifically is 4 James Street. So we are allocating $195,000 towards those projects. Will somebody move that ordinance?
So moved, sir.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. With that second, I will open up 32-19 for public question and commentary, if anybody has any. And seeing none, do we have any comments from the dais before we vote?
I have a question. The allocation for, can you comment on the allocation for James Street? Does that lock us into a particular project, or is that just a setting aside of money toward the project?
Setting aside money for the projects that's going to be for this project, but it goes to the engineering department, and the way the ordinance is written, it gives the township latitude to use that money for that project and any leftover money for any other projects that are sidewalk related.
And what is the allocation for the project? Is that part of it?
$125,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions, comments?
What would be the protocol if the committee was interested in adding another $100,000 to this? You have to go through the whole process again?
That would be a major amendment late in the game, and it would require reintroduction.
You can also add funds next year.
I was going to say, it could be amended next year.
Or not, it would be a separate ordinance next year for additional funds when we do our capital program.
So it doesn't lock us into any specific design of any projects or anything? That is just setting monies aside?
It would come later on when the project goes out to bid and approving the award of the contract for that. You're welcome.
And the reason these questions arose is because the money that we're allocating tonight was based on a certain design to extend the James Street sidewalk. There have been other suggestions about different ways of putting a sidewalk on James Street, which the engineering department is going to look at. And if we, at this point in the year, we can't put the sidewalk in because winter's here. It's obviously a 2020 project at this point. So in the course of the next few months, we're going to have discussions about what that design should be, and if it's so deemed that we need additional monies to put the sidewalk in, we'll take care of that in 2020. But for now, we're putting this amount of money aside towards that project. So with that, any additional questions? We're good? Roll call, please.
Mr. Arbanese?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Rivera?
Yes. I, Jeffrey Grazel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed. Approve the same and direct that the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Mr. Mills, 33-19.
Yes, sir. Repeals and amends portions of Chapter 995 zoning of the Code of the Township of Morris, specifically Chapter 95, Section 91, ignore the L in the text, please, subsection E, and Chapter 95, Section 92, subsection E3.
Okay, and I am going to turn that over to you for the explanatory comments.
Basically, it resets the clock on some of the homeowner association fees that were inadvertently allowed for the affordable housing units that were inadvertently allowed to be potentially increased to equate to a level equal to the market rate units through an oversight, because those were prior developments which should have been and were by other ordinance restricted to approximately 1/3 of the market rate units. So we're repealing the ordinance that created the ability of the associations to raise those frozen HOA fees for the affordables, and then allowing, on a going forward basis, new associations or those associations that have not yet established homeowner fees for new developments to establish them for the affordables at market rate.
Very good. And just for clarity, we're not repealing the ordinance, we're just repealing a portion of the existing ordinance
Correct.
To clarify the language and clean it up.
Yes, that language, it was incorporated in our affordable housing ordinance declaratory judgment settlement, and it globally got included and should have been a little bit more surgically excised. So that's what we're doing. We're repealing that part of it and then putting it back in place with the appropriate protections.
Very good. Will somebody move 3319?
So moved, sir.
Second. Very good. So before I open up to the public, does anybody have any questions or comments from the dais? And no?
Other than it was confusing to understand, but once you understand it, it's the right thing.
It preserves the status quo the way the town fathers intended to.
Yeah.
Yes. The way we intended our original affordable housing is that it be affordable for the length of its life, and we wanted to ensure that people who got into those units with certain expectations were able to maintain those expectations. The language clarifies that going forward, that every development will be clear on that the fact that the affordable units will pay the same rate as the market units for maintenance fees going forward, but those that are already in place are not going to be subject to that.
I have one question about that.
Yeah.
Does that come from a state requirement? Or that was my understanding last year when it was part of our
the policy that the state professes in its administrative regulations is that the affordable units have the same association fee as the market rate units. However, there was a carve-out that stated that those municipalities that had previously, as had Morris Township, restricted the increases would be allowed to continue those restricted rates, and that's what we preserved.
But the requirement going forward is a state requirement.
It is, yes, to be simple.
And there is a change to the pricing for the affordable units and reducing that to offset that the maintenance fees will be at full value rather than at 1/3 or 1/2 below market rate.
So the purchase price is reduced, is what you're saying.
Correct, so that they can keep the units affordable and to help with that assistance.
Very good. So with that, I will open 33-19 up to the public. If anybody has a public comment or question, please come to the microphone. And seeing none, I will ask for a roll call.
Mr. Arbenidi?
Yes.
Mr. Jarf?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Rizzo?
Yes. I, Jeffrey Brazel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same, and direct that the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper, and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Next on the agenda, we have Resolution 205. Wait, 2 rounds of clapping tonight. I like that. We have 205 to 223. As I stated earlier, we have a closed session prior to this meeting, and we have one resolution coming out of that. I would like to note that the title on 223 is changing, so maybe Mr. Mills, should we do 205 to 222 and then do the other two separately?
That works. That's fine, yeah.
So
that way.
Why don't, let somebody move them. I actually have a couple questions. So will somebody move 205 through 222-19? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. Well, why don't you start? I'll start. So we have 213-19, Mr. Quinn, authorizing the non-fair and open contract for professional consulting services. I just wanted to be clear, the public to be clear on why we're doing this. Core 9 Field, which we discussed earlier with the football players, we needed an environmental impact statement at that field when we put that in, but
Right. It's called a letter of interpretation from NJDEP, and it's basically for wetlands delineation. So you have to have that before you can do any work on that. We've always had that at Core9. When we first started doing Core9, we had gone out and we had gotten the wetlands delineation, so when we were getting ready for the turf field, we could see what the boundaries were for the wetlands, what we could encroach, what we could not encroach. And during that, as you know, it was stalled for a period of time due to the methane gas issue. And during that time, the wetlands delineation also changed. We had to go back to DEP for a modification for the building of that to rely on the 2009 delineation that we had. That is expired. We cannot extend it anymore. We still have other projects for that area. So we need a valid letter of interpretation for the wetlands delineation. We were looking at a sidewalk project over there. We're looking at the resurfacing of the tennis courts and any other work we want to do there to make sure that with this wetlands delineation plan in place and approved by NJDEP, that we can do our work and make sure that we do not encroach upon any wetlands.
Very good. Thank you for that explanation.
I think I got most of it. Bill might know better than me, but I got a thumbs up.
Okay. My second question is 217, authorizing the release of the performance bond that's related to the Collinsville Playground project.
Yep.
My question for you is given the troubles that we had with the installation of that playground, is it in our interest to postpone the release of that bond until next year? Do we have any other kind of bond as to securitize issues if it comes up in the spring that something goes wrong through the course of the winter?
This was for the work to complete it, but there is not a maintenance bond associated with this project. This is to make sure that the work was completed, which it has been done. Mr. Mills can probably in a bit more, but we are obligated now that the work has been completed. We've signed off on it with our consulting engineer is to release that bond. Is that correct, Mr. Mills?
The performance bond is as the name suggests, to ensure the performance of the public work by the contractor. Once that work is done and signed off on, then the bond, the cash portion of the bond is, or the bond itself, the obligation is released, including the cash portion, if any, and typically then you would engage in a maintenance bond.
This project did not require maintenance.
Okay, if there were one. Apparently there's not one.
Were the issues addressed? I know there was some issues that they had to go
Yes,
back
we
to.
worked with our consulting engineer and the contractor, and following that, the consulting engineer is satisfied and has recommended the closeout of the project and final payment to be made to the contractor.
Very good. I'm satisfied. Anybody else have any questions about that one? No, I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Which is 21819, which is the subsidy for the Morris Minutemen, in the amount of $55,000. But it says for the year 2018. Did we not release that money back then?
We don't, because it requires them to give us their audit before the money can be released, and we just received their audit because they're on a fiscal year rather than the calendar year. So the money is always 1 year behind.
Okay. And in our budget for 2019, we also allocated $55,000, correct? And that has not been released.
Correct. That money will now be encumbered, and once they submit their audit for that, which will be late next year, that money will be released, and then there is, in this coming budget, we will have, for your consideration, a subsidy for them.
Okay. And for those in the audience who don't know what we're talking about, the Minutemen are the volunteer ambulance corps in Morris Township, and we subsidize them to a certain extent. They do some of their own fundraising.
And Plains also.
Right, and they serve Morris Plains as well.
No, they also get a subsidy.
Oh, they also get a subsidy from Morris Plains, but they do serve Morris Plains.
They serve both municipalities.
Very good.
Does the audit specify what the money is used for?
Yes, it does. Yes, ma'am. I have a copy if you'd like that. Okay.
Very good. Anybody else have questions regarding any of the resolutions 205 through 222?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wanted, 211, 19, supporting the drive sober or get pulled over 2019 year-round holiday platform. I very much support that, and in reading the background language in the ordinance, it reminds me, it's very concerning, not only how many people die in drunk driving accidents, but also how many people, are killed in car accidents. And I looked it up, it was about 40,000 people in 2018 died in car crashes, and about 10,000 plus of those were, incidents involving alcohol. So it's very concerning, and it's, something for us to all be, mindful of. And I feel like it's forgotten so much, and I thought I just wanted to highlight it. Let's see, I wanted to ask on 215-19, can you explain, this is hiring someone as a temporary code official, but then it goes for more than a year? I don't understand that.
It goes for 2 months. We had, back in September, I believe it was, or August, our subcode official, Robert Rutan, had gone out on medical leave. He has decided to retire. Mr. Ott was appointed the temporary subcode official. At the present time, we are going through a application and hiring process to make a full-time subcode official, and I will probably have something in the beginning of the year for you with a recommendation for a permanent electric subcode official to replace Mr. Rutan. This just carries us over and satisfies DCA, so that we continue with all the electrical permits and inspections.
That's it, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? No. Roll call, please.
Ms. Arvanades? Yes. Mr. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. McPherson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
And Mrs.
Yes. Next we have 22319. The reason I separated it out is because the title has changed, and so it's not properly represented on the agenda, and there's one word change in the resolution as well. The proper, well, let me tell you first, that's probably one of the worst kept secret in Morris Township, that the Abbey property on Madison Avenue is going through a redevelopment consideration. Restoration Hardware has a tentative contract to buy that property and develop it into some kind of store of some kind. We are waiting to get a final redevelopment plan, which we do not have yet, so we can't share the exact specifics as what is going to happen at that project, at that property, but they have asked us to give our support to a continued look at redeveloping that property so that they can continue with financing and certain contractual matters. So they were looking for an element of support from this committee. So the change to the title is going to be a resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Morris supporting redevelopment of the Abbey property, the Abbey site by Restoration Hardware. Number 2 is going to be taken out and it's just going to continue, and authorizing all appropriate township professionals and redevelopment council to continue to engage in discussions with Restoration Hardware and the New Jersey local development and housing law with all those numbers that go after it. So we are taking out the language in the middle, and we're also making one language change to that resolution. And who has, sure, my copy. Here's my copy. No, that's not my copy.
Yeah.
223, yeah, I got it. So on the last page where it says, now therefore it be resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Morris in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. Item 1 says the Township Committee hereby supports redevelopment of the Abbey site by Restoration Hardware and supports the adoption of a redevelopment plan. That language is going to say supports the consideration of a redevelopment plan because we can't support any adoption until we actually see a final plan. So we're supporting the consideration of a redevelopment plan by Restoration Hardware for that purpose. Well, we have to move it. So will somebody?
Amended, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I offer that up as amended with the title and the one word change, which Mr. Mills, you deemed insignificant, correct?
Yes.
Very good. Will somebody move that, please?
Offered.
A second? Does anybody have any questions, any further questions about the resolution? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thanks. Next is 224-19, which is a resolution we added from closed session, so I'll turn that over to Mr. Mills.
Yes, Mayor. Resolution 224-19 denies at level 3, which is the Council Committee level, a grievance of Mr. Sean Chamer appealing his termination from the employee of the Township of Morris based upon medical conditions, and therefore his pursuant to affirmative vote of this resolution will result in the continued separation of Mr. Chamer from the Township's employee.
Very good. So prior to this meeting, we had a hearing with the employee. It's one of the hard jobs of this governing body if we need to terminate an employee. Tonight we unfortunately had to do so. It's one of those hard decisions that we have to make, but that is what this resolution is about. And will somebody move it, and then we can ask if there are any questions? Will somebody move that?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I have a second.
Second.
Very good. Does anybody have questions about Resolution 224-19?
I have a question, Mr. Mills. I was briefed on this situation, but I was not present during that part of the closed session, so should I abstain from voting?
That would be probably in order, if you don't have the background for it.
Very good. Any other questions? Mr. Arvanites is abstaining, but everybody else, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
I
abstentions?
think you should probably roll call.
Roll call that one? Okay, very good. Roll call, please.
Mr. Arvanites?
Abstain.
Mr. Durfee?
Yes.
Mr. Mosquito?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Guzman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, general business correspondence. Will somebody move the consent calendar as noted in attachment A? Have a second? Having trouble with seconds tonight. Will somebody second that? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Next on the agenda is a year-end report. It's something that we added to our meeting this year. It's something that I personally have not seen elsewhere in the state of New Jersey, but we wanted to show off the accomplishments of this governing body. Mr. Jorfy worked very hard as head of our Standing Committee for Communications in putting this graphic together. And since he's the youngest and has the best eyesight, probably, can you just read off the list for us, please?
I'll make a caveat. This document is designed for online viewing. So if you are on your mobile phone, on social media, or on our website, it will be much easier for you to digest. This is a PDF. I can zoom in and scroll down for you. Actually,
That's just a compliment.
You can turn that microphone on right there.
No, this is different.
How's that? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Is that better?
Great.
Mayor, do you want to take the lead on these, or?
I'll let you do it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The Standing Committee worked to try to summarize the year's probably biggest accomplishments by the Township Committee, and I'll make another caveat that none of these could have happened without the hard work of our staff here in Town Hall and their due diligence. So on behalf of the whole committee, I would say thank you for them for enabling us to do this on behalf of our residents. And the first accomplishment would be we want to highlight the flat budget we passed with no tax increase for our residents. As many of you know, most of the taxes you pay are for the school district, and the township collects those taxes. But for our municipal taxes this year, we kept those flat in line with last year. Next is the Transportation Advisory Committee, which we passed an ordinance back in August and established. And actually, we had our first meeting this week on Monday. Deputy Mayor Wilson led the meeting. And this committee, if you haven't heard about it before, is made up of residents to try to one, advise the township committee on ways to alleviate traffic, but also on ways to encourage alternative methods of transit, and to also seek resident input and advise the committee on issues related to that.
So, Mark, before you continue, I just want to let you know that after we go through these, I was going to turn it over to each of the committee members to make comments on these things. So you don't have to make extensive comments on each one. We'll turn it over to the people
Great.
who did the work.
Then I will just read them.
Yes, you can just read them.
Next is what we did tonight was pass a single-use plastic bag ban based on the recommendation from our Environmental Commission and their survey. Next also is I think I take this one to heart, is increased communications with our residents. We wanted to focus from the township committee to just get the word out of what we're doing and to make sure that no resident is surprised by anything we do. We want to offer them the chance to provide input before the decisions are made here in Town Hall. So one of our biggest initiatives was to increase the communications. We had a newly developed strategic plan from the Economic Development Advisory Committee, which was presented earlier this year. Mayor Grizel had a shared services mayor's roundtable discussion recently. The Collinsville Playground project was completed, and another great one for our recreation services, the open space grant that we received from the county, and that could not have been done without the hard work of Bill Folsch and Tim Quinn and others here in Town Hall. And lastly, a key highlight is the commercial occupancy rate having increased. So those are the big highlights we have. They will be easier to read online, and we look forward to sending it out this week.
Right. And if you scroll back down to the last one, if you could for a second. So the reason why this is on here is because commercial occupancy rates drive what the commercial tax base is. If an office building is vacant, they pay less money in taxes. If it's fully utilized, they pay much more money in taxes. So having our occupancy rates increase puts less pressure on the residents remaining in the town for the tax base. So that's a very, very important element of accomplishments for this year. I also asked Mr. Quinn to ask each of the department heads to give us a couple highlights from their department, which we passed out. I wanted to just go down the line and ask each person from the standing committee to highlight what's on this list, but any additional comments that you wanted to make. So we're going to combine sort of the standing committee reports and this into one speaking opportunity. So would you like to start?
Do I get the honors?
Anybody else want to stay? Go ahead.
Sure. Okay, I will begin with the Infrastructure Committee, which I sit on with Committeeman Mancuso. One of the big things we did this year was we did a walkthrough not too long ago to go through Common Station to basically review it and see what we can do to make improvements for our commuters who go there every day. We have a list, and we're looking forward to implementing those improvements to the station. Another big upgrade was one to the HVAC system here in Township Hall. And another one I had on my own, actually two. One, which everyone will realize once they're installed, is there'll be new projector screens here in the courtroom. And secondly, I owe a debt of gratitude to Committeeman Mancuso for his work with our negotiations with St. Thomas More Parish earlier in the year in getting our lease renewed for the parking lot for our commuters. So thank you, Peter, for that.
Thank you, sir.
For communications, we have upgrades have been made to the servers and to the hardware, and for the communications committee would work with Tim Quinn, Mr. Quinn, Virginia in his office, and Deputy Mayor Wilson. Like I said, we've worked hard to try to bolster the communications. We developed a communications plan earlier in the year. We posted it to the public to solicit their input. We held meetings with various departments in Town Hall to discuss communications, and we put out a resident engagement survey earlier in the year to see how our residents prefer to be communicated to, and that really helped us make decisions later on in the year. And it guides our strategy. We had monthly office hours, we had monthly meeting recaps, we had a mailed newsletter, and we've increased communications on social media. And one last thing I would note is that Ms. Wilson worked to introduce a draft bill to the League of Municipalities which was passed, to encourage our Assembly and State Senate to basically improve the communications from developers and builders to residents in the community, which it would directly impact by expanding the scope of who they would have to be required to communicate to let them know to notice. So thank you, Kathy, for your work on that.
Mr. Mancuso, would you like to comment on your standing committees?
Good, thank you, sir. I think the most important thing we've done in the last 3 years is we've lowered the tax rate, as Jeff was speaking about before, in the township by 2 full percentage points. I would venture to say that that is probably way ahead of the curve for a town our size, considering that there's 565 townships in the state of New Jersey, and I would venture to say that no town of our size has been able to do the same thing. So I was very, very proud of that. The other thing I will be working on, and hopefully it continues, is this distracted driving or texting while driving. Ms. Wilson brought that up before about driving while encumbered with alcohol, but this is far more serious, because surveys have said that people would rather drive with a drunken driver than a person who's texting. The numbers are astronomical as to the amount of accidents that are caused. So I'm going to continue to work on that, and I'm just very proud of it. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Peter, on this, do you have this list in front of you?
Yes.
So do you want to read off the personnel and public works, since you're on those committees? Flip it over. Other side. Bottom of the other side. Turn the page over.
Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. See, public works is in the middle.
I've worked on the fire committee with Kathy Wilson. We're still trying very, very hard to induce more people to come in and volunteer and be part of our fire department, especially obviously the volunteers. It's a very, very difficult thing, and I'm just very, very proud that we have such dedicated people working for us in that area. What else? Personnel. We've been working on doing an employee handbook. Is it redoing the employee handbook, or is that up to
Works now. Okay. We had done an employee handbook initially when I came on board in 2011, and we constantly updated it. We do have it's a work in progress. It changes based on case law or new laws that come into effect. So there were some improvements that were made with that. It's also part of the best practices that we review that every year with the Township Committee. One of the changes that I have and been working with Labor Council on is a new law that was enacted earlier this year that deals with supporting employees that are subject to domestic violence, and we'll be moving forward with that with a policy and also with a resolution for the Township Committee of appointing certain people to be the liaisons with other employees that may be the victims of domestic violence, and offering accommodations or services that we can to assist them in their situation.
And the other one I think I wanted to mention was I think one of the proudest things the last year or two is the fact of getting Cornine Field back online. 2 of my grandchildren play there, and they are just delighted with it, except for the fact that when you get a little older, walking from the parking lot up that hill gets a little tedious, but it really builds up your stamina.
Our next project over there is to put in the handicap parking spaces that be much closer. Sir.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have, sir.
Very good. Mr. Arbanese? Will you touch on Parks and Recreation and any other standing committees you have there?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to commend our Recreation Department for their many accomplishments in getting things done. And I think that's a theme for this whole committee this year especially, that we got a lot of things done. As far as 249 Field being completed, Collinsville Playground being completed, other upgrades that we put in place to make our recreation facilities 5-star facilities. I'd like also to commend Bill and his staff. On Veterans Day, I had asked if maybe next year we could implement contests in our community for best Halloween decorations on people's homes and best holiday decorations in people's homes. And Bill took that challenge and actually implemented best holiday decorations contest for this year, not for next year. And so I'd like to thank him for putting that into place. I think we have 26 homes already on the list, and they will be touring the town up until Tuesday before his staff decides on who has the best decorated home in Morris Township. So thank you, Bill, and thank your staff, please, for that, too. As far as Public Works and our team, again, a lot of projects getting completed, keeping up with our infrastructure, and investing in the future of our infrastructure, and making sure that we, again, have a 5-star rating as far as the quality of our streets and all of our utilities in our municipality, and also the same thing with our sewer utility. Making the necessary investments and making sure that the expenditures in there are under control so that we don't burden future committees and residents in our township. Finally, on our engineering side, the completion of many of the road projects and being able to obtain certain grants to offset the cost of that again to enable us to keep our budgets at a no increase level. And I commend the whole team and the whole staff of the township, from Tim Quinn and his whole team to the committee for helping a lot of things get done for our township. So thank you.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Wilson?
Yes, I chaired the Transportation Standing Committee, and I must say that Monday night when we had our first meeting of the Transportation Advisory Committee that was established, I was really proud of that. It was a lot of work for us to get to that point, but we now have a committee in place whose job is to study and explore and make advisory recommendations on ways to improve walking, biking, driving, and parking in Morris Township. So it's a tremendous, it's a big interest of residents, obviously, for quality of life concern, and we now have a committee in place whose job is to work together and, look for ways that we can improve in those areas. So I'm really happy about that. And this is not on our list, but I'd also like to just point out that we are working pretty hard here to meet the Friday deadline for, we are applying for a complete streets technical assistance program. It's not actually a grant, it's not giving us money, but if we are selected, we will have some people from Rutgers and Sustainable Jersey and North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority come in and work with our Transportation Advisory Committee members and members of the public we're applying for what's called a walkable community workshop, which, if we are selected, we'll learn we'll get some background training. It's a training experience. Get some background on complete streets. We'll do a walk audit, which is really interesting and really helpful. You go out in the field, you walk, and you talk about ways to improve that particular setting. And anyway, we're making application for that, and it's a lot of work, but we are optimistic about completing it by Friday for next year. And as far as environment, our environmental commission has been very active. They've done a lot of building up their own background knowledge this year, attending various conferences and workshops. We did, as you know, pass the plastic bag ordinance tonight, which was the product of a lot of work and a lot of collaboration. We are participating in a coalition called the Northern Jersey Sustainable Municipal Alliance Group, and it includes towns from our area, to Chatham, Madison, Summit, Livingston, and others. And we have a good working relationship in place to address environmental issues. And I think it's really important, it's very helpful, and I'm glad we're participating. And I'm hopeful that some of the other towns around us will join in as well. And I guess that's it.
Very good. So I'm just going to clean up a few additional items that we didn't cover here. So I'm on the engineering committee with Mr. Arvanites, and I'm not sure that you mentioned the Skyline Sewer Project. I know you talked about infrastructure improvements, but we have a very, very, very large Skyline Drive sewer project. It's one of the last big areas in the Township of Morris that was unsewered, and we're in the midst of that project, but it has been it's a huge $5 million project. That's a huge undertaking, so it's not complete yet, but it was a huge accomplishment this year for our engineering department. With regards to finance, we had a bond sale this year. We talked about it at earlier meetings. We got a fantastic rate for our bonds. Mr. Quinn's not here to confirm it, but I think it was 1.82%, if I'm correct. A fantastic rate on our bonds going forward, so that saves it'll save money to residents long term because we're paying that low interest rate. We had a tax collection rate this year of 99.42%. So it's like if you're in business and you send out bills, a certain percentage of your people just don't pay you. They eventually do. So we had a collection rate of 99.42% in Morris Township, which is just an outstanding collection rate. Also under finance, we had added assessments this year of $79,500,000, and that is from new construction.
New construction and a number of commercial properties that were rehabbed, such as 60 Columbia Road.
Right, and in addition, people fixing up their homes also. So when they fix up their homes, they get a slightly added assessment to their homes, and all of that translated to $79 million in increased value in Morris Township, and people pay taxes of an increased value. So again, that helps lower the pressure on all the other residents in what they have to pay. So raising our assessed values in certain senses, we don't want to overbuild, but that's a nice number to see.
It's going to help the 2020 budget.
Right, it'll help the 2020 budget. Police, we had a targeted enforcement program, which was very successful. This year, we had a number of them. We talked tonight about the Drive Sober initiative, the crackdown, but we've had the texting initiative this year, several initiatives from our police department, and as you saw tonight, we had the reaccreditation of the police department, really a wonderful group. And one thing that wasn't mentioned is the recycling program changes. We purchased another vehicle this year to do recycling, so our recycling is going to be more efficient going forward. We're going to be able to complete garbage and recycling collection in 4 days instead of the current 5-day cycle, and that means that when there is a holiday during the week, nobody's going to have to miss a collection of any kind. Everybody's going to get a full collection every week, and that's one of the complaints I've heard a couple of times this year, so going forward we won't have that.
Same day, so.
And same day. So right now a lot of people have different days for garbage and recycling. Now you're going to put your both cans out on the same day. We're going to have to do some education because they need some separation, yes. Correct? I believe it's 4 feet of separation between the two cans, so we're going to have to do some education on that. Very good. And the last thing, just to, in terms of personnel, we have a new QPA. Our QPA, which is a qualified purchasing agent, retired this year after many years of service, and we took one of our existing personnel and added that responsibility with an additional stipend, but we were able to add the QPA in a very efficient manner. So all of this are some really great accomplishments from this Township Committee. We set a high bar, I think, for ourselves this year. We hit a lot of high notes, and I'm very proud of our accomplishments. Thank you to all of our employees. Thank you to our department heads. We have fantastic employees. And the most thanks goes to the man to my left. None of this could happen without Mr. Quinn steering the ship. I have used that analogy before. Morris Township is a big boat. I never understood how big it was until I sat in this seat. It is a very large town. There are just a multitude of things that go on from day to day that have to be addressed. Tim Quinn does that very effectively. He's a very hard worker. He has Morris Township always at his first, his best interests of Morris Township is first on his list. In addition to the day-to-day tasks, accomplishing everything that we talked about today is just a testament to what Tim Quinn does for Morris Township. So thank you very much for all your hard work. Okay, with that, does anybody have any, let's see. We have standing committee reports. Well, we covered that.
We did that.
We did that already. The one thing in standing committee, I didn't talk about shared services. In addition to the roundtable, we did have last shared services or joint court meeting of the year this past week. It's nice to hear that we're actually under budget in the shared court. Some towns, I should say. So Morris Township is actually going to be getting a rebate, I think $34,000, something along those lines.
Yes, sir, and our allocation for next year will be approximately $20,000 less than 2019.
Yeah, so it's a great shared service. It's run very efficiently. I mean, that number's a lot of things go into that number, including the number of court cases, but we're the driving force. We're the biggest member, and it's a very successful joint court, and costs are going down as they get more efficient. So we're very happy about that. Yes, a model for the state of New Jersey. So next on the agenda, we're did standing committee reports, year-end report, commentary, just some general commentary from the Township Committee. Does anybody have any closing remarks?
I do. I'm sorry I didn't bring this up earlier. I should have when we... I would have brought this up earlier when we had a full house, but there's a Latin expression called ave atque vale, which means hail and farewell. Tonight is the last meeting of our great township attorney, John Mills, who will be stepping away. And stepping away means not too far. John has been with us for 29 years. His father was here before him and who served with me during my first 9 years, 30 years ago or 35 years ago. I believe his grandfather and uncle were also township attorneys. Yes. Well, John has been a tireless and dedicated person on behalf of Morris Township. We will miss him, his expertise, his humor, and his generosity. I ask you all to join me in recognizing Mr. John Mills. Thank you. That's all, sir. Oh, yes. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Hanukkah.
Very good. Mr. Jorphy, any final comments for the year?
It's been a pleasure serving with you all this year, and looking forward to next year, and happy holidays to everyone.
Mr. Arvanites?
Yes, as I mentioned before, we got a lot done this year, and so it was a great year. And I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year. And that's it. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
That'd grow.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
I had other things, but I'll do it.
Very good. So just to add to what Mr. Mancuso said, and thank you very much for your kind words about Mr. Mills. Mr. Mills will be on as special counsel next year. We're not going to get rid of him so quickly, but he's going to be appointed special counsel because all of those years of knowledge and institutional knowledge, I should say, we're not letting go of so quickly. So I think you'll be seeing Mr. Mills around the building and maybe at a couple of meetings, I hope. But again, John, thank you so much. Yeah, we still have some projects that he's still working on, so he won't be going so far. I also want to congratulate Mr. Jorphy. Mr. Jorphy's finishing up his first year on the Morris Township Committee, for a first-year committee man, you've done a phenomenal job. You've taken on a huge workload, and you are one of the driving forces in all of the progress we made this year. So I personally want to thank you for all your hard work this year, and you've made a huge impact on your town, and everybody who voted for you should know that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Lastly, I should say also, I mean, my deputy mayor, Kathy Wilson, being mayor is much more than I ever expected it to be. The amount of things that go on in this town, as I said before, are just tremendous. I have helped push the agenda, as you've seen at every single meeting, but right at my side throughout the year has been Deputy Mayor Kathy Wilson. She has been we've done this hand in hand. We've pushed this town forward together. It's not just me because I have the microphone, but she and I I call it the dynamic duo. Kathy Wilson deserves just as much credit as I do in all of the accomplishments for this year, setting the agenda, setting the vision, and thank you, Kathy, for all of that hard work. Lastly, just want to thank everybody for the opportunity of serving. It's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed my first year as mayor. It's been eye-opening, to say the least. But I've enjoyed working with all the staff, again, with Mr. Quinn, who's not only running the town, but he is my right-hand man in understanding everything that goes on. So, again, Tim, thank you for all your hard work. And with the rest of the staff, John Mills, Mrs. Emilio, thank you very much for helping me be mayor this year and running the meeting so efficiently. I very much appreciate that. Happy holidays to everybody. With that, we do have one more public commentary portion. Does anybody have any final comments to say?
I gotta get my notes out, sorry.
Very good. Name and address, please.
Yes. Diane Holland, 26 Northbridge Place. I want to tell you how wonderful Old Glen is. It is, it is, you have to hold yourself back. I know, the speeding. After they finished it, the trucks were leaving, coming up to Madison Avenue, and I ended up, because I thought they were turning left, so I got on the right, and I ended up with a truck on my left, and I had come up, and it was so wonderful that I looked over to the truck, the driver, and he finally looked at me, and I went, and I said, no, and then I went, because it's so nice. Thank you. I love the Christmas lights competition. I just think that it's a great holiday lights. It's a great way to bring the town together. I'm wondering if the Township Committee will consider in the future those who sign up for it, if they're willing to be acknowledged, if we could actually know who is entering, because I remember from my childhood going around and looking at Christmas lights. And there would, if we only have 26 who have entered, that's a lot of streets to go on to try and find those special needles in the haystack. So if you would consider letting us know, and will we know who the winner is, or the winners by categories?
What's the plan?
I can let you know one entrant. It's 132 Western Avenue, Hillside Hose Company, #1. Someone went up on a ladder and put all those lights up. I'm not saying who it was.
I didn't think you needed a ladder.
Does it have to be a home? Does it have to be a home? Can it be a business?
No,
I don't remember.
We're getting honorable mention, I think.
All right, okay.
The winners will be put out, yes.
Okay, great. I had a question. Since our taxes, the actual real estate taxes haven't gone up, I'm a little confused how Mr. Mancuso said that the tax rate has gone down 2%. Is that over a longer period?
Over 3 years, ma'am. Over the past 3 years. We had, last year was flat, the year before was down 1, flat and down 1. So basically, in the 3 budgets, the tax rate for individuals, not including
and understood. Just for the.
Pardon me?
Okay, my notes may be incorrect. And then there was a lot of controversy over this past year about the vaping and the police would like very much, my understanding is for the town to ban, I think it's ban vaping or something. And we had a very nice presentation, but there may be parental disagreement with that. Is the township committee going to be considering the vaping ordinance again? What do you think you're going to do with that?
So just for clarity of the record, I can't say that per se that the police department wants to ban vaping. The suggestion from the police department at the beginning of the year is to mirror our underage possession law for alcohol. Okay. So currently, just as you can't buy alcohol in underage, you can't buy alcohol at a retail establishment. Morris Township was one of the first communities to put in place an underage possession law for alcohol, which has been very effective, been on the books for a lot of years. No complaints, I would say. Is that correct?
It deals with private property.
Yeah.
For the party.
Right. So it deals with underage drinking parties on private property, and it gives us the police an ability to break up an underage drinking party. So with the suggestion, I don't know that they want to see a ban, but their suggestion is to give them a tool to deal with the underage vaping epidemic, because kids now, sometimes they get together and drink, but sometimes they get together and use other illicit materials because they're not allowed to purchase them, but they have them in their possession, as another tool in their toolbox to help with that issue. So where we go in 2020, I am not sure. I personally expect to bring it up again. I told you earlier that I'm very happy that Jersey City stepped forward to be the first municipality to ban flavors. I'm going to ask that we take a look at that next year, and we'll see what else that the Township Committee is up for.
Okay. All right. And my comment about banning really was several months ago, so thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, actually. So with Old Glen being repaved, does it help us run faster too, or is it just the cars going faster?
I don't run. But I walk on the traction line, and this morning I was very disturbed to see that one of my neighbors of a certain age had gotten onto the traction line with his car. And the individual was confused. There's no question about that. And I know the individual, but he did not recognize me, now that I said he. I got into the car and I said, oh, well, I'll help you get back to Liberty Greens. But then I decided that was probably not where I wanted to be. And so we went down to the railroad crossing at St. Elizabeth's, and a train had pulled in. And there were cars coming out of St. Elizabeth's, and it was wait. And then we went across, and I got out, and I said, go down to the end of the parking lot, and you can make a right, and then the street, and you can make a right, get back to Liberty Greens. What should I do about this?
There is a process with the police department to call for a reevaluation of certain drivers when they encounter them, whether it be a motor vehicle accident, they stop them, they're confused, they have signs of it. So they often, for an example, we had one lady who's elderly, and she was involved in 3 motor vehicle accidents in a 2-week period, and they sent her recommended to the state of New Jersey for a reval. If you wish to be anonymous and provide some information on that, the police department has to actually make an observation to do that. The other option is, if they have family members, is working with them to doing the hard thing, and that's taking away the keys.
And I should take this offline.
Thank
okay.
you. Again, happy to talk to you tomorrow or whenever you want.
Any further comments? So one last, okay, one more. Somebody has to be the last one of 2019. It could be you.
Hi, George Quillen, 7 Bishop Court. I just wanted to thank the Township Committee and the employees of the Township for a very successful year. And I liked and agreed with all the accomplishments that were listed by Mark and mentioned by others. But I think one in particular that wasn't mentioned was just the structure and the atmosphere of these Township Committee meetings, which I think has improved very substantially. And the fact that there's a greater atmosphere of welcome for comments from the public. And the structural change to put a comment and inquiry period for the public very early in the meeting, I think was a brilliant idea and has really worked out well so that people don't have to wait for 3 hours to say, you know, the storm sewer in my neighborhood's not working properly. So thank you for that, and I think it's been a great year. Thanks a lot. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you. And since we're saying thanks, I should have said in my closing remarks, George is on our Board of Adjustment, but to say thank you to all the volunteers for all of our, I thank the employees of Morris Township, but really to thank all the volunteers that volunteer on all our boards and committees that really help move the town forward. Some boards, like the Board of Adjustment, required a lot of hours this year. So thank you, George, and thank you everybody else who's a volunteer in Morris Township. One more thank you, Mr. Lentz, for being here at all of our meetings. I very much appreciate the coverage that you give Morris Township in the newspapers, and thank you to the residents who come and share their thoughts with us on a monthly basis. Very good. So with that, we have a couple other things. Consideration of the monthly reports. The following reports for the month of November 2019. November or December? November 2019 are on file in the Office of Township Clerk and the Township Administrator. Reports for Tax Collector, Finance, Police, Joint Court, and Joint Library. Will somebody, and Fire. Will somebody move those, please?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Lastly, claims for payment, list of bills and vouchers, $22,200,071.91. I won't repeat all of the people who we pay. Will somebody move the bills and vouchers?
So moved, sir.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Arbonides?
Yes.
He said yes, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't hear him. Mr. Durfee?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Giselle?
Yes,
For
for the last time. So now I am going to adjourn the meeting, then we are going to reconvene on January 7th, which is our annual organization meeting here. It's on a Tuesday. By statute of limitations, it has to occur within the first week. So we're holding it on a Tuesday, January 7th, and the first regular meeting of the Township Committee will be January 15th of next year. And it is with happiness and sorrow that I am going to bang the gavel for the last time in 2019. Thank you, everybody.